Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I live out in the country, deep in the sticks in Georgia. For the past 12 years, every night there has been banging on my roof, tapping on my windows, scraping noises on the walls outside. Sometimes huge crashing noises and bangs that make me just about crap myself. The whole house shakes. Sometimes I stay up all night and see these huge beasts moving toward my house through the windows. I've managed to see their faces a few times, but they run lightning fast when I turn on the porch or yard lights or shine a flashlight, faster than Usain Bolt. I tried leaving the lights on at night to keep them away, but they throw rocks at the lights until they break if I do that. It's horrible because I can barely sleep and I'm too poor to move. My time with my wife gets interrupted by all the noise. Sometimes she gets startled by the noise, which kills the mood. I'm worried because it's gotten worse. I think they want to kill me. They seem like they've started following me to work. If I work late, I'll go out to my truck in the parking lot and sometimes see one messing around with my car. The muffler was torn off once. One broke a window and I briefly saw it with its arm reaching into the car through the broken window as I left work. They distract me at work by throwing pebbles at the windows if it's dark enough outside. They also started sending me telepathic messages about how they want me to leave, how I look tasty to them, and how they eat humans they hate. I think this explains missing 411. I've tried taking pictures, but they always come out messed up in some way because the hairy terrors avoid light and are so quick. Pic-related looks like one I saw staring through my window when I went to get a midnight snack and flipped the lights on briefly. Does anyone have any advice? Can Bigfoot be warded off, and can I block telepathic communications from them?
I encountered a Sasquatch last year in the northern Cascades while hiking alone. I took a video of it. Then after that I was overcome with dread, so I ran and somehow got lost 3 miles up this mountain for over an hour, slipping and sliding down this steep grade, holding onto branches and bushes. And while I was lost, there were about a dozen tree knocks in total, following me from the left and right. Anyways, I sat down finally and asked in my mind, "Sasquatch, can you help me find the trail? I'm lost and just want to go back to camp." I had nothing to lose. I just thought that and sent it away and kept walking. So as I'm heading down, holding onto branches because of the steepness of the slope, and I hear this massive roar from over my right shoulder. It reverberated my entire chest and body and was so terrifying. I instinctively turned left to get away from the noise. I was too scared to even look back. It sounded like a lion, and I'm heading left now instead of down. About 100 yards later, I reached a small cliff and found the trail. As I'm walking down the trail, I'm looking over to the right where I was lost, and the mountain gave way to huge, steep, gravelly, and loose shale cliffs. If I had continued even another 100 yards, I would have easily slipped and fallen to my death or serious injury. So whatever made that roar that forced me to turn left at that exact moment saved my life. I feel incredibly humbled and lucky to have had this experience. I got a video of it. It showed itself to me, because right before the encounter I was singing songs about Sasquatch and how I want to see one. These things are real, and they are more than animals. Here's the video. Logically, I should have walked up to it and gotten closer, but I can't explain the level of fear that washed over me when it moved its arm. This thing was ducking massive, about 70 yards away, and it's still huge. This shit literally changed my life. A Sasquatch essentially saved my life. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I have to share my story with other people, but it's screwed up because nobody believes you or makes jokes about it. I'm glad it happened though. Looking back, it was the most exciting event of my life.
First, let's try to rule out what they are. If it's a Sasquatch, it's just surveying you, as you are most likely in his territory. These apes are usually docile and travel on their own or in small but spread out packs. They smell like literal swamp ass and are known to attack small animals like dogs, mostly for consumption. Depending where you live, they might not even eat meat. If you can catch a glimpse of their jaw, you can easily tell if they're carnivores or not. These things are easy to scare and will only attack if threatened or you have done something to them in the past. If it's a spirit, as in you have paranormal experiences of any kind, learn about the land you're on and seek out a tribesman for help, because if these kind of spirits are around, they are most likely connected to some sort of tribe which contracted these spirits to protect them from either other bad spirits or enemies of their clan. If it's a feral human, get a shotgun, shoot them in the face, and call the authorities. These things are the reason why people go missing in national forests and are responsible for the missing 411 which you mentioned. They're smart, strong, fast, and extremely dangerous. Do not even attempt to confront them, and if they see you are putting up a fight, they'll eventually leave, but do not make it easy for them to enter your home. Lock everything and set up alarm systems.
How do I tell if it's a feral human?
Sorry for the late reply. So a feral human, as the name implies, is a person who is feral in the sense that they never were a part of modern society and were born in the wilderness where they learned to live off the land and fend for themselves. We call them Apemen because they resemble apes because of how much hair they grow and how insanely powerful they are. Now it's unclear how different they really are from us because these packs of people, if you can even call them that, have been around in their particular area living off the land for who knows how long. Now what do I mean by their particular area? To put it simply, we suspect that they have been in their areas for thousands if not a bit over 10,000 years and have begun adapting to their environment, hence the feral features. We also suspect they are the reason for why actual Sasquatches are rarely seen because they kill and eat them. Hell, they'll kill each other if they were desperate enough, but the reason they won't is because they are intelligent enough to understand that having a small group of yourself is beneficial. Their groups are large enough to handle a group of hunters but small enough to evade detection. I personally suspect that they have mingled with each other through incestuous breeding and with actual Sasquatches creating a unique breed of human which supposedly creates giants. Whether that's true, I'm not sure. Feral humans are heavily connected to the old world, that's for sure, and I'm almost positive the reason why the US government still protects national forests is to observe and study an array of creatures, feral humans included.
Try leaving some kind of offering. Extend the proverbial olive branch. Whip them up some kind of food, maybe, something they couldn't get on their own, and use that as a bargaining chip. If you leave me alone, I'll give you more. But if they're capable of communication, they're capable of negotiating, then it's just a matter of coming to an agreement.
That's a good idea, thanks. Maybe I should try to send out a telepathic message that the food is for them and I'm trying to make peace. Any idea what food they'd like?
Well, if they're threatening to eat you, there's a decent chance they're carnivorous, or at least omnivorous. So I'd recommend a meat dish, although prepared in a human-specific way. Maybe leave out a big bowl of pot roast or pulled pork, something meaty and flavorful but not so overwhelming they take offense. If it's actually Bigfoot, as in like Sasquatch, they're probably primates and more likely to be omnivorous, so a wide spread couldn't hurt. I don't know about any specifics they'd like as I have no real Bigfoot experience myself. But food as a peace offering has tons of precedence even outside of human interaction, so it's likely to at least get the point across that you don't want trouble. Just have to hope they're reasonable.
I've left a smoked pork butt out on my back porch. I mentally sent a message out to the Bigfoots that I want peace and have nothing against them. I apologized for shooting at them, explaining I was scared. Nothing has happened yet. We'll see.
This happened in the summer of 2020 in Lawrence County, along Blaine Creek in eastern Kentucky. My mom's home, where I grew up, is situated in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. There are no houses or neighbors within half a mile of her house. The area is simply beautiful mountains. One night her old dog was barking, whimpering, and growling. He just wouldn't stop acting up. My mom was confused since there were no outside noises that she herself could hear. The dog was pacing back and forth to the door and windows. After 30 minutes or so, she decided to grab her flashlight and go outside to make sure everything was okay. No animals had been messing with her trash cans, so she figured her dog was picking up the smell of a raccoon or other nocturnal critter. She scanned her yard and the creek and didn't see anything out of place. So she turned to go back into the house, and that's when she saw it. I will give the best description that I can from what she told me. I've never seen it myself and hope I never do. She said it was standing on its hind legs. These hind legs looked like an animal's, but the front looked more human. It had patches of long light-colored fur all over the body and legs. The top looked like a humanoid man while the lower part looked like an animal. The face was very odd. She called it an alien Apeman. She said that it stood about 7 feet in height and was muscular. She stood paralyzed with fear, shining her light on it. It looked at her. Then it started walking on all fours out of her yard towards the back and toward the mountain. It did stop and looked back at her a few times but finally disappeared into the darkness. There was another encounter. One night a few weeks later her dog began acting up again. She decides to stay inside. She turned her lights off and looked out of her dining room window. There was a pole light in the yard. she was able to see it again, although it was further away from her and not as detailed. She said it had the same shape and was the same thing she saw just weeks earlier. She backed away from the window for a few minutes, then looked out again. It was gone. After that, she would walk out onto the back porch and fire her shotgun at dusk, hoping the creature would heed her warning. It's been over 2 years now and she still fires the shotgun every early evening. The creature hasn't returned.
I'm a 62-year-old man who has seen lots of things in my life. My mother and my grandmother were Cree natives. My mother told me one day a story from her grandmother about the Wendigo and how it related to our people. She would always warn me to beware of the Wendigo. I joined the Canadian Armed Forces when I came of age. My folks drove me to the gate to walk into my new life. My mom told me,
I am proud of you, my son. I'm sure you will do well. Just be careful when you are out in the wild. Watch for the Wendigo.
After my basic training, I was sent on a tradesman course and then to my first post. I was assigned to the Special Service Forces in Petawawa, Ontario as a communications specialist since my job included fixing telecommunication equipment. I had a top-secret security clearance. We trained hard when I was there and I was ready to go head-to-head with whatever enemy I would encounter in my missions. One day in December we were transported via helicopter on a mountaintop close to Algonquin Provincial Park for a week of winter warfare courses. During this week of training, we each had to do guard duty at night. On one of those nights at around 2 a.m., I started hearing strange voices down the mountain. That night the temperature was around minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. At first, I checked to see that everyone was sleeping in their tents. They were all accounted for. I scanned the area to see if I could locate someone. There was nobody there, at least no one that I could see with my military-issue flashlight. I continued hearing those voices for a while, so I decided to call out to whoever was there. Hello. Who goes there? You're on a Canadian Armed Forces base. Identify yourself. No answer. I kept looking for whatever might be there, but I was still hearing those voices that sounded Asian. Some came from the right, others from the left. They seemed like they were having some kind of conversation. Since it was a training and learning exercise, we had no ammo in our weapons. Not knowing what to expect, I did the second best thing I could do. I fixed the bayonet and kept walking around the camp. The voices stopped after a while. I was wondering who in their right mind would hike into the wilderness for at least 20 miles in such miserable weather just to pull up a prank on us. That week they closed down the base 2 times because it was so cold. Of course, we stayed on a mountaintop. It was part of the training, they said. My replacement came after a while, and when he showed up, the first thing he asked me was what I was doing with the bayonet on my weapon. I didn't want to say I was hearing voices down below us. I told him it was so cold that I decided to do some drill movements to warm myself up. I don't know if he believed me. The next month there was a huge military exercise in Wainwright, Alberta. The entire brigade ended up there. One day I was going on a call with my partner to do a repair on a piece of equipment that was out in the middle of nowhere. We had been driving for about 45 minutes in deep snow and could not find the equipment. I was driving and decided to stop and check our location to find our target. My partner was looking at a topographical map while I was trying to see if I could locate a reference point. On our right, there was a forested area with pine and underbrush. On the left, there was an open field. At about 100 feet from the tree line at my 10 o'clock position, there was a large white-tailed buck foraging in the snow. The deer was facing us and looking out in our direction. Then, out of nowhere, a huge creature blasted out of the tree line and aimed directly toward the grazing deer. It took less time for the beast to cover the approximate 100 feet of the deer than it took for me to tell my partner to look. The beast grabbed the deer by the head. It was taller than the deer by about 2 feet. It was reddish-brown in color with very wide shoulders. The head was pointed and was set on the shoulders without a neck. The arms were long and muscled. The legs were like 55-gallon drums and the body was covered with long hair. I wish I had more time to look at it and get more details, but everything went so fast. As soon as the beast reached the deer, it placed one hand on the top of the deer's head and the other at the back of the neck, then twisted it like it was a rag. Without even stopping, it headed back into the woods with the deer over its shoulder. I put the truck in gear and said, "Let's get out of here." My partner managed to find the trail leading to our destination and we found the equipment. When we made our way back to the bivouac area, my sergeant asked me if everything went okay. I told him I don't know what I saw on our way to the other location, but it was pretty freaky. He looked at me and said that he didn't want to hear about it, so I kept it to myself and I walked away. As time went on, and as I grew older, I realized that I had witnessed a Sasquatch harvest that deer. I had a nice career in the army. I did some missions and went on several peacekeeping missions throughout the world. I saw a lot of strange animals and witnessed many unusual situations. But that beast in Alberta was the one that I will never forget.
In the spring of 1988, my boyfriend and I, along with other college friends, decided to spend our whole spring break hiking and camping in the Sierra Nevada mountains. One of our friends' fathers grew up in that area and recommended a spot for us to go to near a place called Round Lake. We hiked into the mountains and had a beautiful view of the lake. There were 7 of us on that trip. We were only going to be there for a couple of days. At about 8 p.m. on the second day, we had our dinner and we were just finishing up the dishes. One of the other couples went for a walk with the excuse of finding a spot to watch the sunset.
Yeah.
Right. Well, an hour or so later they came running back into camp saying that they saw a monster. They said that they were on an overhang on the side of the mountain. They were sitting on the rock ledge just chatting when they noticed a pine tree start shaking wildly. The trees weren't tightly packed in that area, and there were many bare spots. So the pine tree that was shaking was only in a small patch. As they were sitting and watching it, they would catch glimpses of a large black figure. They thought that was a bear. Then the shaking tree stopped. Then they saw the weirdest looking bear come running out of the woods, but it wasn't running normally. It was deformed, he thought, because it was propelling itself forward with its front legs instead of using its back legs. As they continued watching, they realized that it wasn't a bear but, as one of them described it, the biggest freaking chimp I've ever seen. Then it went from mid-stride on all fours to casually walking on 2 feet. It stopped and stared out over the valley and then plopped down on its butt with its back to them. They said that it was at least 5.5 feet tall sitting down. It had seen them, but it didn't care that they were behind it. My boyfriend said that sounds like a Bigfoot. After he said that, everyone piped up, wanting to go and see it. So the whole group walked to the spot. Well, by that time it was gone. My boyfriend was staring off into the distance and said, "Do you guys see this?" We all looked towards the dark sky to the east and there were spinning lights, but whatever held these lights could not be seen. The light stopped and at that moment we all heard a loud moan to the right of us that seemed to go on for about 45 seconds or so. When the moan stopped, it was followed by a higher pitched whoop and then the spinning light started again. This seemed to go on for maybe a minute. Again, when they stopped, a moan started again and this time it came from the left of us. Again it ended in a whoop. When it stopped, we all looked at where the lights had been and we all clearly noticed that the lights were much closer to us. We were all amazed by it. Then again, when the light stopped, the moan started to the right of us. This continued on, but each time the lights were getting closer to us. It started coming from all around us, even above us further up the mountain. We were all freaked out and someone suggested that we should get back to camp. When we got back to camp, we should have packed up and left. But for some reason, we all thought our campsite would somehow protect us. We talked about our cool experience, but not one of us said maybe we should leave the area. We continued chatting about the experience. I don't recall feeling fear yet. Oddly enough, someone said he saw something in the woods darting from tree to tree. Someone asked if it was Bigfoot. But my friend said it was glowing a silvery white color and was only 4 feet tall. Then he yelled, "Look! It's right there!" We were scanning the woods and all feeling a little freaked out. I saw the look of shock on my boyfriend's face, so I looked where he was looking and I saw the silvery white being 8 to 10 feet up the tree with its hands holding onto the trunk. The light from the fire wasn't lighting up the whole tree, so what I saw wasn't very clear, but it did have 5 fingers that appeared to have suction cups on the tips. I saw one side of its bulbous head and one eye. The eye was large, like the size of a baseball. The head was the size of a large party balloon. Minutes later, we all heard a large crack of a tree limb. One of the guys said he thought he could see red eyes glowing. He said it moved back behind the tree. Then all of a sudden one of the girls screamed. We all jumped in fright. We looked in the direction where she was looking. There it was. A Bigfoot. It was standing there staring at us as it just swayed back and forth. We all estimated that it was well over 11 feet in height. It was breathing very heavily. Its mouth was pursed in a downward position. It inhaled through its nose and then exhaled, and as it exhaled it growled loudly. Then we heard the sound of the brush move and a bright lighted figure appeared. We watched as the Bigfoot turned and walked out of the campsite toward the figure. That was our chance to go. None of us packed. We just ran for the cars and left. A few of us went back the next day to get our stuff. Nothing was touched, not even the coolers of food. None of us, as far as I know, ever went back to the location. Most of us still keep in touch, but we rarely ever talked about that night.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.